Hey guys, welcome to a new video. In this video I'm going to be remaking the armor parts for my season 7 Ahsoka, the Siege of Mandalore version. So this costume is about 2 years old now, and all of my armor is foam armor. And when I made it, I did not properly seal or prime the foam, and that was mostly out of laziness. At the time I just did not feel like dealing with that, and I knew at the time that because I did not properly seal or prime my foam, it was not going to last as long, and I was going to have issues sooner than later, and I was going to have to remake it sooner than later. So at the beginning of all this, when I first made it, I made those choices, and I made them knowing what the consequences were going to be. So now I'm going to be remaking them. I plan on making them exactly the same. There are a few minor things I'm going to change, mostly with the shape and the fit of them. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you my armor and talk about the problems I'm having and the things that I plan on keeping the same and the things that I plan on changing. So real quick, we'll start with her bracer. So here it is. So it is a layer of 5mm foam with 2mm on top for the silver detail. And then it does have straps on it. This is the fabric I used for my first dress, which was a two-way stretch fabric. So it does have that stretch to it, and they're just hot glued on, so I just slide them on over the gloves. And then the blue here is just a blue suede. So really the biggest difference I'm going to be making with these is just cleaning things up a little bit. You can kind of see that things are just a little bit messy. My cuts aren't the cleanest. The 2mm layer doesn't quite line up as nicely as it should with the 5mm layer. At the time I did not Dremel my edges, so it's a little rough overall. And then again, I am planning on replacing these with actual LEDs. For the most part, I'm going to keep everything exactly the same. I'm going to keep the build the same. I'm going to keep the materials the same. Just when I make it this time, I am going to clean everything up so it looks a whole lot nicer. They're still in pretty good condition paint-wise. I just have a little bit rubbing off on the very edge right here where it rubs up against the hand plate. Here's one of my hand plates. They are just Velcroed onto my glove. I tend to just leave them on the glove so that they don't get separated and I don't lose one or the other. These are 5mm foam that I did some light shaping to with a heat gun. So these ones did get a little. So all of my foam pieces do have a little bit of heat shaping to them. And these ones I'm okay with. Again, I'm going to be keeping the shape the same. Going to be using the same material. Biggest change is just I'm going to make sure I actually prime it, and then I do want to actually put a cut in the back here so that I can actually have a crease down the center right here. Here is one of my Shin Guards, and I do have the boot armor attached. It is all attached with Velcro. It's attached with elastic and hot glue, so it does have some movement to it. Again, just the biggest things is these high traffic areas where it moves and rubs a lot. The paint has flaked off, it's chipped, and I have actually gone in and repaired it. I've actually gone in and repainted quite a bit of it. You can kind of, it's a little hard for the camera to pick up just because, yeah, you can see right here and kind of right there. It just kind of looks more like weathering than like actual touching it up, but the paint I used to touch it up was a different acrylic paint than what I originally painted it with, so it does have a little bit of a different sheen to it. But for the most part, these have held up really well. It's just these high traffic areas I have had to go in and touch up. So for these ones, I am going to do a little bit more altering to. I am planning on shortening them a little bit because I do have issues with the knee plate and the top of this sliding against each other and the knee plate kind of sliding underneath the boot. And then I am going to be changing the bottom here so that it is a bit more comfortable to wear and just it looks a little bit better. Other than that, everything's going to be exactly the same. All the attachments are going to be the same. And then again, just making sure I properly prime and seal the foam and go from there. So then here are the knee plates. These are still in pretty good condition. Again, just missing some paint on the bottom here from rubbing on the Shin Guards. These I am going to keep exactly the same. I'm not going to change anything other than making sure I properly prime and seal the foam. They just slide on with some elastic and just hang out over my knee. Alright, now the big one. So here is my belt and all of the hip and butt armor. It is all one piece. And this is the one that needs the most work. It has the most damage to it, and I've done the most repairing to it. It's in pretty rough shape, especially these dark pieces right here, because these are 2mm, so they have a bit more flexibility and movement to them, and they're all cracked and flaking. I've had to go in and repair them quite a few times. I've had to go in and repaint parts quite a few times. I have pieces where my contact cement is actually coming apart. It was older contact cement, so it wasn't the best. So I do actually have parts where my contact cement is peeling away. I have had to go in and put some fabric backing right here to strengthen it, and right along there. I have fabric right here to strengthen it, and it's all in pretty rough shape because this does have so much movement to it, being right by the hips. So, and then when I made it, somehow it ended up being like 2 inches too small, so I had to add a piece to the back here, and these don't line up quite how I want them to. The shape is a little off on them. I had to go in and change this piece right here because I had detail wrong. I have since replaced these since first doing this paint job. The little night owl symbol right here and the top of it are different colors because I painted them at different times, and it's all pretty rough. And this is going to have the most changes to it. I'm going to make the belt a little bit bigger, only like a ½ inch or so, just a smidge bigger. I'm going to change the shape of these so that they curve a bit more this way because they are straight. So I'm going to put a dart somewhere in either the top or the bottom so they curve a bit more. And then I'm going to change the shape of these back pieces, these two side pieces. This one I'm going to leave alone. I'm pretty happy with it. But these two side pieces I'm going to change the shape to. And then again, like the gauntlets, things just aren't quite as clean as they could be. So I'm going to make sure that I do a bit of a neater job when I do that. And then for these 3 pieces right here, I'm actually going to cover them in fabric instead of paint. Everything else is going to be paint. These are going to have that faux suede like the gauntlets, but these pieces right here I'm going to do fabric covered foam instead, just because of how much movement this needs. I'm not remaking my crown. I actually did just recently remake the crown. It is foam covered in Warbler, and then it's just magneted on. I don't feel like taking it off right now because the magnets are all sticky from me wearing it. Alright, so I do still have most of my pattern pieces for this, so I am going to be using the exact same patterns and just making those small modifications that I need to. So I have 4mm and 2mm. So this is a bit thinner than what I originally used, but it's what I'm going to go with. It's what I have, and I think it'll work just fine. for everything. So for anyone who's wondering, I am planning on just keeping all of my foam armor, so I'll have 2 sets of armor once I remake it, and I'm not planning on throwing it away or selling it or giving it away or anything. If I were to do any of that, I would just give it away just because of the quality and the state it's in. I wouldn't sell it or anything, but I am planning on keeping it. I'm a little bit of a hoarder and I don't like to throw things away, and I have a lot of sentimental attachment to little things and I don't like to get rid of anything. So I will be keeping these little Alright, so I'm getting ready to cut out these detail pieces that go around the outside. And so what I'm going to do is trace these patterns onto some new paper. So you can see that I can see it through the paper, so I'm just going to trace them out and then cut out these new patterns, and then obviously cut out the details so they aren't the solid piece like this, and then trace them onto 2mm foam. Alright, so I traced all my pieces. These 3 are just the half because then when I cut them out, I'll just fold it and cut it out that way. So these ones that already have all of my details marked on them, I'm going to cut these out. But before I do that, I am going to trace these as is before cutting anything out. That way I have a reference and some guidelines for when I do come in to trace these, because once I cut out this middle piece, these are going to get pretty flimsy, and then that way I will have somewhere to match it up so that I can get these nice clean parallel lines and everything. Also, don't make the mistake that I just made. Make sure you trace out the full pattern before you start cutting it up. Make sure you trace it out twice before you start cutting it up. So now I have to kind of like, I mean, I could cut this one out, but I really don't feel like it just because I'm going to be lazy. So we're just going to kind of like hold this all together and trace it out again because I need 2 of them. Alright, so we're out in the garage now, and these pieces I have glued together. So this is the fabric I cut out and the 5mm foam. I just used some Loctite spray adhesive and glued everything together. I did glue the dirt on this with contact cement first. So now what I am going to do is go in and clean up any overhang that I have and just clean up some of these edges so that everything lines up, and then I am going to glue these pieces on. I am going to do the same thing and just use the Loctite adhesive. It doesn't stay sticky because I have it on the box right here. So it does lose its stickiness after a little bit, so I'm not worried about getting it on the fabric or anything. The only thing is once I do spray it, I do have to be careful with the fabric to not get dust or dirt or anything on it because it'll probably stick to it. And then once these are all glued on, I am going to tape off the fabric and plasti dip everything. Alright, so here is the first piece done. You can kind of see some of my fingerprints from sticking to it and pulling up the glue. I forgot to mention that when I am gluing this, I am trying to keep the glue as close to the edge as possible, so I'm not just spraying all the fabric. The glue on this, the nozzle on this, does actually come out in a line. So it kind of helps
so it doesn't just come out in like a spray like regular spray paint does. So it kind of helps keep it a little bit more localized to the edge instead of just getting it all over. But here is the first one done. I did also forget to mention I am going to go in and Dremel these edges just to give them a little bit of a cleaner finish and kind of round them over. And then, so there are a couple of places I am going to have to clean up with the Dremel. And then I will be taping this off and plasti dipping it. Alright, so now I am working on the belt. I'm not making too many changes to the shape or anything to the belt. The only thing I did do was add like 1/2 inch to it. So here are the fabrics I'm using. I have this metallic pleather and then this dark suede. So I am going to cut out those 3 curved pieces out of 2mm foam. And then I'm going to cut all my pieces out of fabric, sew all of the fabric together, and then glue it all to the foam. Okay, so I have my fabric pieces cut out. I did cut out a fairly large seam allowance just so that I'll have material to wrap around the foam and glue to the back. And then I did go in and mark where my seams need to start and stop on these pieces. Okay, so I have it pinned right now. It's not laying very nicely because my seam allowances are so wide and I haven't clipped them or trimmed them or anything. But I'm pretty happy with how it is laying. Again, super wide seam allowances. I did go in and mark about 1/4 inch away from where I want my seam line to be so that I could pin this. And now I'm just going to go in and carefully sew this together and then trim my seam allowances. Alright, it's sewn together. I did go in and trim the seam allowance and clip it on the curve. It's not laying as nicely as I want, but I'll fix that when I glue it. I also realized I made a little bit of a mistake, but because my seam allowances are so big, it's not that big of a deal. I forgot to account for the fact that I need a little extra room right here for when I glue the belt in, because I want this seam to line up with the back end of it, so that way when I glue it, these aren't on the same level. This looks like it actually is behind it. But because I have so much seam allowance at the top, that's not that big of a deal. Alright, so I have this side sewn. I'm really happy with how it came out. I have gone in and trimmed everything up. Again, I have larger than normal seam allowances, so I have something to glue to the foam when I put the foam in. Alright, so these are all dry, and I did go in and Dremel these edges to kind of smooth them out and run them over. And they are ready to, so next I am going to heat seal them just to help get rid of some of the fuzzies on the edge. And I'm going to tape everything off and paint them. These ones I do have to go in and hot glue this bit down. This one kind of stuck just because I didn't really put spray glue there. But the spray glue is all dry, and I'm not worried about it showing like that because it just kind of adds some weathering and texture to it. And then the belt is all sewn together and ready to have the foam glued to it. So I did add this little piece right here. I just stitched some brown faux leather to this suede and then top stitched this little trapezoid on, and then it's all going to get glued together. Alright, so I have this side all glued on, I have the belt glued on, and I am so happy with how it's looking. There are a couple of like little puckering things and everything. This was the first seam that I sewed, so this is a little weird, but it kind of straightens out a little bit when it's actually curved. But I am so happy with how it is coming out. And then this hip plate will get glued on like that once it is all painted. And then I will do some shading and weathering on here. But I am so happy with how it's looking right now. So now just to glue the other side. Alright, so I have everything taped off and plasti dip. As you can see, I did one light layer to kind of help seal these edges where the tape is, so hopefully to help prevent any bleed through, and then 3 thick layers. And now I'm just going in and going to do a couple of light coats of silver until I am happy with everything. I am just using some focus. Rust-Oleum metallic finish, and then once I am happy with the silver, I am going to go in and do a clear coat of Mod Podge. The reason I'm going to do Mod Podge is because Mod Podge does have some flexibility to it. Alright, so they are all painted, they are sealed, and I just took the tape off, and I am so happy with how they came out. I do have a little bit of like silver powder from it flaking off with the tape, but I'm not too worried about it. Here are the hand plates, everything. So now what I'm going to go in and do is do some shading along the edge here. That'll also cover up any tape residue that stuck down. It's mostly just on this one. And then I do have a couple of places I need to go in and hot glue or super glue down. Like I do need to go in and glue down this middle panel. I have a couple of some gapping spots between the two layers along the edge, which I'm not surprised at because I did heat seal these afterwards, after I had already Dremeled them. So I do have some spots that I am going to go in and glue down just to help clean it up a little bit. Alright, so I went in and did some shading around the edges here. I am going to go in and repaint this part so it is a little bit more noticeable. My paint was pretty watered down, so it dried very, very translucent. And then I went and painted the night owl symbol on this one. Again, my other hip plate is still drying, so I will paint that one when it's done drying, because it's spray paint that's drying on it. And then I did go in and do some weathering along here, or some shading along here. But right now I am working with my LEDs to figure out how many I need and which ones I want to use. I do have a couple different kinds. Sorry, they're falling out of the bag right here. I've got some big ones and some small ones. I'm probably going to go with the smaller ones because they'll be a little bit lower profile. And then I'm going to be using coin cell batteries. These ones are actually rechargeable. So they have a little USB recharge port, which is nice. I have a bracer done. It is all done. I have the straps on. It is weathered. The lights work. I am very happy with how it came out. I went in and did some weathering and scratching with some black paint and then some gray paint. So the gray kind of contrasts with the silver on there. It's hard to see on the camera, but you can kind of see it like right here. And then I did the same thing on the straps. Just used the same gray and black and just kind of had fun with it. I'm very happy with how it looks, how it fits. The only thing is I might go in and tighten up this strap a little bit. They're just hot glued in like my previous ones. Because this one came out a little looser than I would have liked, but other than that, I am so happy with it. It is so beautiful and so nice, and I am so much happier with it than with my first version. So now I just need to do the second one, and then that will be the bracers done. Alright, the hand plates are now officially done. I did go in and do the same weathering as I did on the gauntlet. Just using some black and then gray and just doing some scratching and dry brushing. And then I put the Velcro on the inside and they are done. The only thing is I'm not sure if they're too long or not. Her hand plates are